in some ways, you cannot fault sports for trying to restart and trying to get the economic engine and the business part of this going again. But they've put significant parameters in place to catch this if it happens. So I'm encouraged by that. But obviously, when this is starting to happen, you get a little bit discouraged about getting back on the field and putting together all these plans to play and finish these seasons that were in the middle when the coronavirus hit.
You know, to me, the most interesting thing is how do you react? So, I mean, we look through the football programs, for instance, where players have tested positive, 13 at UT Austin, 8 at Kansas State, 8 at University of Alabama, 3 at Oklahoma State, Clemson, Auburn, South Florida, Iowa State, the list goes on. So, you want to prevent the spread of it so that people who are more vulnerable don't get sick, obviously.
Right.
But do you think we're going to become accustomed to the idea? And could the NFL be in a situation where they say, yeah, players are going to get coronavirus, but we're going to still have our season?
There's going to be no doubt we're going to run across players testing positive, just like we're running into people in society testing positive. And we have more treatments, as Dr. Gottlieb talks about every morning on Squawk, about all of the things that are out there that are improving our ways of handling it. But that doesn't mean the virus has gone away, and obviously it has not. So now the leagues have to talk about how do we continue to go forward, and when do we say this is not something we can handle by putting all of these athletes, all of these players in the same place. You look at hockey and the other sports, they're trying to do it in small groups before they get to the large group. And if you do find an issue in a small group, that means you're going to find an issue when the large group comes together in all likelihood. So I think the leagues are trying to have a great plan in place, but also have to be ready for the reality that that plan can't be followed because of too many positive tests. I think that's what we're going to start seeing here in the next week or two.
So what happens if the NBA season, whatever we mean by season at this point, begins in Florida, but a number of players on teams grow sick, and do they start suspending some matchups? I mean, what would that look like? I mean, what happens if they just have to pull the plug? And I think in China, which we were watching as a template for here, their basketball season was supposed to get underway. The plans were started, but they never did. I mean, they never just got it off the ground.
And that could very well happen here. You start to put the plans in place, and those plans include some sort of training camp. Hockey has done with small groups before the larger group is scheduled to come in at the beginning of June, July 10, excuse me. With the NBA, you're talking about players coming together before they start playing games and playing a few games before their playoffs. So they can run into this situation and then make a decision from there. It's a question I've asked a little bit in this restart. What happens if there is a playoff series going on and a team has a 2-1 lead in a playoff series, and now the team that is down in the series gets 4 or 5 players that test positive? Does the series end? Where do you have to go? So all of these what ifs, all of these questions have been asked by multiple sides. The decision is going to rest with the commissioners and the players' unions in each league. How do we handle it? When do we handle it? And as you questioned before, which is the right question to ask, how many positive tests will it take to have to change the plan significantly? We don't know the answer yet, but I'm sure it's being discussed by everybody who runs a sport right now.
I think that's, Mike, the real question here is if a couple of players come down with it, then you have other players who have no doubt been exposed to it, and they may have to go on quarantine. And pretty soon, in a sport where the rosters are thin like basketball, you're back into the D-League players if you're going to continue. NFL, they have 50-man rosters or whatever they are, 45. So maybe that gives them a little bit more opportunity there. You're going to be calling the Belmont tomorrow, or participating in the broadcast of it.
Right.
There will be no fans there. Where will you be when this broadcast takes place?
I am where I am right now. I'm at our NBC Sports headquarters just north of New York, and it was my first time, Tyler, in about 3 months that I traveled. I flew from my home in Michigan to New York, and it's a kind of a return to the life that I was living for the last 25 or 30 years of traveling to cover sporting events. It was a little surreal. It was a little interesting, but it felt pretty safe. Airlines, hotels, everyone else, they're doing the best job possible to allow people to try and return to the economy. For us, we're going to split our crew. I'll be here at our NBC Sports headquarters. We have 3 folks on the ground at the Belmont. They're just on the Queens-Nassau County border. And we have 1 analyst in Florida, 1 analyst in Chicago at their home. So we're all socially distant. We're putting a technology plan together, and our folks have done an amazing job, as all TV folks have, to try to continue to present sports and news the way we normally see it under very different circumstances. I will say I was at Belmont Park yesterday. They have been running races. I was there for the first race. No fans, no race call. It was a bizarre scene to see a horse race going on, but only the trainers and a couple of other folks there to watch it. It's certainly a very odd feeling.
And we'll be tuning in with extra interest just to see what it looks like. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you this weekend.
My pleasure, gang. Have a great weekend.
Mike Tirico of NBC.